Welcome to Diary of a Queen. I'm your host, Danielle Martin. I am joined by Ashley Nebel in South Carolina. Ashley, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I am so good. I haven't gotten to see you in a long time. Last time I saw you, no children. Now you have 2 children.
Yes.
And life is busy.
I know. Life is crazy. Yeah. It's a lot has happened since we've seen each other last.
It has been quite some time. I'm happy to be able to connect. And, every time I ask somebody to be on the show, they either ask me one of 2 things. Why do you want me? Which I think is funny because I think everybody has some kind of incredible story to tell and they just don't recognize that they do. Or they ask me, who's going to want to hear? They'll tell me who's going to want to hear about me. Same thing. There's always a reason for people to be able to listen to other people's stories. I think we learn so much from other people. So I kind of want to dive right in. Are you ready to go?
Let's go.
All right. So we just talked about your 2 beautiful babies. Tell me a little bit about your kiddos just to kind of kick it off, ages and all.
So Sinclair is, what is she? She's 28 months, a little over 2, going on, 57. I mean, she is like so much personality packed in one little body. I mean, she looks just cute and adorable, and then she'll be out in the yard barking like a dog, because she hears another dog barking and she's trying to talk to the dog. I mean, she's, I tucked her in tonight she wanted her swim bonnet on and her fake glasses on before bedtime. So
whatever works.
Yes, she is full of personality. And then we had Leon, and he is 3 months old, and he is just as chill as he can be. And he usually ends up laying in a room by himself playing with a toy, and I'll check on him and his whole face will light up like, oh, someone's paying attention to me. So, full second kid there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know when we talked last, right before you had Sinclair, well, actually we were chatting about your IVF journey. I remember specifically your transfer day because it was a day, I believe my husband had seen you that day. At the time you were doing photography for real estate. My husband was selling a property, and I remember he said, well, I have to go. Well, why? Oh, well, I'm having a transfer today. I was like, oh, okay. Kind of a big deal, but I remember it being significant. And I want to talk to you about your IVF journey. There's a lot of things that people don't know. They don't understand. And we've talked on this show very often about the masks that women like to wear. Mm-hmm. We like to pretend everything's okay. We like to wear a mask and not ask questions, not ask the hard questions. And I really feel like peeling back those layers helps other women understand. And if there's something that you can do to help somebody else that's going through that same journey, that's what we're here to do, to be of service to other people. So with that being said, before you get to the part where you're getting ready to do a transfer, what did things look like leading up to trying and all of that?
It was sad. I would say that's probably the biggest takeaway from those 3 years that we tried. It's hearing, oh, I got pregnant on the first try, and, hearing multiple pregnancy announcements from people. I had friends that were on their second child where I was trying when they had their first, and it's very difficult going through that, and especially kind of being quiet. For me, being quiet about it. The type of person I like to talk about it. So that was very difficult. We tried for 3 years before we ever got pregnant with Sinclair. And that first, I did a full year with my OBGYN first of just, tracking cycles and taking your temperature and doing all of these things. Well, I was first diagnosed with PCOS. And when you have that, you don't have a cycle. So for me, I was tracking and testing and trying to figure out, when was the right time to conceive? Well, there was no right time because I wasn't ovulating. If I could go back, I would tell myself, go to the fertility doctor much sooner. But most OBGYNs keep you for a year first. In hindsight, mine should have released me sooner because I wasn't ovulating. So I would just encourage people to really listen to your body and, kind of take charge of your health in that sense. But it was a good year because we really leaned on God the whole time throughout our journey. We prayed constantly. Our pastor at our church, they had 7 years of infertility for he and his wife. So David and Marilyn Chadwick, they're big in, the community in Charlotte, and they were amazing with us, praying with us, people laying hands on us at the church, constantly praying over us, checking in, emailing, all of those things. And our big prayer was that God would do abundantly more than we could ever ask or imagine. That was our prayer. So fast forward, we went to one fertility clinic in Charlotte, and it just didn't feel right to me. Nothing felt right about it. And I'm not a picky person when it comes to especially medical care. I'm pretty laid back about that kind of thing, but nothing felt right. And they diagnosed me with PCOS just based on my numbers, which were my AMH number, which is usually it's an indicator for your egg count, but it's not an exact science. So it's not, 1 for 1 or anything like that, but it's a pretty good indicator. So most people's AMH number, a good number, is around 1 to 5. 5 is a very high number. I had a friend that got tested the same time I did, and hers was 0.6, and mine was 17. So mine was just way off the charts, which was, why they diagnosed me with PCOS, just kind of immediately. And fast forward.
For those that don't know, can you define what PCOS is?
It's polycystic ovarian syndrome. And to be quite honest, I don't know that much about it. I know that there's a lot of misdiagnosis surrounding it. If you look up textbook, PCOS is for someone that has a very high BMI, which I don't have. And there's a lot of endometriosis misdiagnosis kind of tied to it. I think, I'm no medical professional, but it seems like it's kind of an easy thing just to throw in. So if you have, any sort of fertility issues, people just kind of say, oh, it's PCOS, especially if you're not ovulating, that kind of thing.
Right.
So I mean, that's kind of all I really know about it. There's a lot of cysts on your ovaries. So you can have a lot of pain with that. They burst. I never had that pain. I never had painful periods or anything like that. They say that it can be brought on by stress, like a kind of a stressful time in your life. And I do remember when my periods just kind of stopped. And it was a very stressful time in my life. But once again, I never had the pain or anything else associated with that.
Right.
And I do think it is often misdiagnosed. But at the clinic, I was literally told what my patient number was. And I was told, when you call back, don't say your name, say your patient number. And that was my sign to leave. I never saw the doctor. I was always seeing a nurse. I was seeing, we did an IUI. So IUI is where they take the sperm in a basically in a long syringe. So like think of a turkey baster. And they shoot that into your your ovaries to try to kind of speed up the fertilization process and make it a little easier for both the eggs and the sperm. So we did that. And there's a whole kind of side story to that, that was kind of my final straw for leaving that clinic. But my point to that is listen to yourself. And I tell people that all the time, listen, if you don't feel like you're being heard, if you don't feel like you're seeing the doctor, to me, it just felt like I was flushing my money down the toilet, and they were very happy to collect it. And, they didn't have an interest in me getting pregnant, sort of thing. So my neighbor across the street said, well, my very good friend is a, endocrinologist in town, and he's amazing. So I set up an appointment with him, and turns out he's top in the state, and he's amazing. And I've literally lost count how many people I've sent over to him. I mean, I'd say close to 100 at this point. So speaking of, I should text him and tell him that I get some type of referral fee or something for all the people I've sent over.
And I'm happy to put his information down below, since it is a referral that is coming from somebody who has gone through and been successful. So I will put his information. We'll both take some kind of royalty from
there
him.
you go.
Okay.
We can get some kickback. So when I met with him, he was amazing. He looked at my numbers, and he diagnosed me with hypothalamic amenorrhea. And I was immediately like, okay, kind of punching it into my phone. So I, didn't forget it, and went home and looked it up, and kind of was hit in the gut about it, because it is something that often comes on when people go through anorexia in their life, which is something that I struggled with in high school, middle school and high school. And then I think a lot of, I think pageants are kind of coming around to that whole skinny thing not being the most in, but I think a lot of pageant girls can probably relate to that. So that was kind of a kick in the gut to realize that I had possibly done that to myself. Now, of course, there's no magic test I can take that would tell me, is it PCOS or is it that? And to be honest, it really didn't matter at that point in my life. It was about kind of fixing it. But so we did one more IUI with him, and that did not work. So we moved on to IVF. And with IVF, you take a lot of shots. You take a lot of hormones. You are putting shots in your stomach every single day. You're taking tons of hormones. I mean, just the medication itself can cost, $6,000. All in all, the transfers cost upwards of $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. All of these shots and medications, what they're doing is they're stimulating all of the eggs in your ovaries. So they want as many eggs as possible. They want them all stimulated and big. So it's basically like, once again, I'm no medical professional, but this is from my understanding of going through it, it's like right before your period. So right before you ovulate, when your eggs are mature, those eggs are the ones that are going to drop. So that's the whole point of all the medication. But it's to get every egg in your ovaries mature and ready. And then what they do is they go in and harvest those eggs out. And then they take the collection of sperm from your partner and they create the embryos in the lab. So, I literally just in the past month, I've had 3 people extremely close to me. One being my absolute best friend, another being a family member, that have gone through their retrievals all just within the past 30 days. I've once again don't have enough fingers or toes to say the amount of people that have reached out to me since we went on this journey and opened up about it. I had a girl yesterday say, I've debated about messaging you, but I just need someone to talk to. And all of these people, the majority, there's an average egg count number usually of, let's say 9, maybe. I had 75 in my ovaries.
Wow.
Yeah. So I kind of missed my calling in life. I guess I could have been an egg donor, but I was struggling for money back in the day. So they ended up getting 59 mature eggs. And then they create the embryos from that. And your rates really they're usually kind of cut in half from whatever you have, that you actually get fertilized from that. So I think ours was 43 that were fertilized. And then you wait 5 days and they watch them grow. And so if any of them grow abnormally or don't grow correctly, some can grow too fast, some too slow. They don't make it to what they call the freeze, so the blast. And so they call you, I think, every 2 days. And after 5 days, they'll give you the final number. We chose to send ours off to get genetic testing on them, which is an option that you can do to kind of know, just gives them a better idea to know which ones are the best to put in and which ones, have the higher chances of not having a miscarriage. So we opted for that, and we ended up with 34 embryos, which is abundantly more than we could have ever asked for or imagined. So it was definitely a God thing. It's exactly what we prayed for, and just a really cool. It was a very special full circle moment for us. And we transferred Sinclair. Yep. That was, I think, a month later. And yeah, I went to the house, and I was standing on a 12-foot ladder in the middle of Ideal Way in Charlotte, taking pictures of the house, and packed up, and Scott and I drove to Charlotte and transferred, or to Winston-Salem, where the embryos were, and we transferred. And I came home and threw a Christmas party at my house, and I don't think I sat down that day other than the car ride. And, you hear a lot of people that say, oh, you have to lay down with your legs up and you have to do this and do that. And I genuinely believe in my heart, and I think that this takes some pressure off of people too, is that there's nothing you can do or, can't do that would help. I think it's just, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Right.
And so that was kind of freeing to me to not feel like, did I do something wrong by pushing myself too hard? Should I have laid around at home? So anyways, and she took, I could tell the very next day that I was pregnant.
Wow.
And I think that was also a God thing, because I needed that reassurance. And we got the call a week later that I was pregnant. And I just, of course, bawled on the phone. And, I know how blessed we are to have gotten that many eggs. And I want to be very clear that that is not normal, nor is it necessary. Because that comes with a burden that we weren't, not a burden, but a decision that we weren't really prepared to make, of what do you do with those embryos after you're done. So we are done at 2, and we have 32 embryos left. And, we've made the decision to donate those to other couples that are wanting to have children and can't. I've got friends that I've made through this fertility journey that, have adopted eggs because the woman's eggs aren't, they're not viable eggs. And people that have adopted sperm because the husband's sperm is not viable. So, our embryos will hopefully go and help someone. But it's kind of an interesting thing to think about, having that many children.
Well, I mean, what an incredible journey. This is really my first time hearing everything. There's a couple things that I want to touch on. First, you had quickly brought up eating disorders. And for anybody that is watching, if you feel like you are falling into that pattern of an eating disorder, please seek help.
Yeah.
Because there are people that will listen to you and will help you. The second thing, that I heard, and this is just inherent in being a mother, is the thought of, and I've lost a child. Mm-hmm. So I lost a son. Mm-hmm. There was that feel, what did I do?
Right.
That like guilt. What I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? And to some degree, I feel like you just kind of have to let go and let God, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That there's nothing that you can do. And that was just not meant to be your journey. Difficult,
right.
Being said and done. The other thing that this is going to be more of a question, because it's something that people don't talk about. And for some people, it isn't an issue, but I know for a lot of couples, it is the strain that this can put on a relationship. Mm-hmm. You're going through such an emotional roller coaster just because you're wanting so badly to have a family. Now you're going to add on top of it guilt. And then let's go ahead and stack something else on, hormones we're injecting into our body. It's just like this triple decker sandwich of, it can really take a toll on your relationship. How did you and your husband deal with all that comes in play of going through that kind of journey?
We got a dog.
And it's a cute dog, I will say.
True story though. That is why we got the dog. We were both depressed. I mean, it was depressing. It was coming home and not having the children that we wanted there, and not knowing when or if that was going to happen for us. And we were both kind of slipping into a state of depression over it. There was, very thankfully, no fighting with us, no blame game, nothing like that. And I actually think I'm nicer when I'm on all the hormone stuff, so that wasn't a problem. But it just was the, coming home and not having sort of anybody or anything there other than, just the two of us. And we felt that void. So we did get the dog for that reason. But that's really where our faith came in, and just really relying on God to get us through, and relying on those people in our lives that we could trust. And, I think being open about asking for prayer and asking for help and, asking all of these things, it really let God get the glory. And that's what we wanted, and, it was just an incredible journey, to see it all kind of come to fruition. But, there was a lot of relief when we got pregnant, for sure. And truthfully for me, I didn't even want to do the second IUI because I felt like I had to take a break just for my body and my mental health. And I just felt like it's not going to work. I just want to go straight to IVF. But my husband, Scott, really wanted to give it a try at the new clinic, just to see if it would work. So we did that. But once we decided on IVF, it just felt like, okay, someone else is going to do the work,
Right.
I don't have to worry about tracking my cycles and getting, trigger shots, because you have to get trigger shots to trigger your ovaries to go, and all of these different things. So once we did IVF, it just felt like, okay, I can relax a little bit. So not that it's a relaxing process, but
right. And I remember the picture, and I've seen other people do the same thing, of all the needles in a heart, around, I think it was around a onesie maybe.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking how jarring, in the best way possible, I don't mean that in a negative way at all, how jarring it was, because instantly, as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, I felt so many emotions for you, and it instantly made me think about you and Scott and the situation that you're going through. And I know that something that I can do for you guys was to pray. So I hope that, by putting that picture out into the world, it really did bring light for a lot of people of what kind of journey. And that's just a piece of it. We're not talking about the emotions that go along with it, and grief from having transfers not work. And, you had a really great situation, which you mentioned.
You're very lucky.
There are people, I have a very good friend who lives in Florida. She tried for 12 years. She did finally get her miracle baby, but she talked about a lot of the same things that you talked about, dreading going to baby showers, literally sometimes couldn't even go, was angry, not angry at the person, angry at her own situation. Why can't this be me? Anytime someone would say, oh, I get pregnant on the first try every time. Exactly some of the things that you said. So are there things, I'm sure there's a lot of things that are triggering during that time, but going through that journey, do you want people to ask you about it? You personally, I know it's not going to be the same for everybody, but do you want people to ask you about it? Do you want people to talk to you about it? Or from the people that you've spoken with in a general type of way, are people like, I don't want to talk about it? How do you navigate?
Personally, I do. But I know a lot of people don't. But I also know, I've got a very good friend who is going through it right now. And she's not the type that is going to be open about it. But at the same time, she needs someone to talk to about it. And I think that's really everybody, right? So even if someone's not open as I was about it, they still need somebody to talk to, because it is I got a message yesterday from a girl that I went to school with many moons ago, and I haven't talked to her since. And she said, I've debated about sending you this message so many times. Like, I've started to write it and, haven't sent it. But she said, I have very few people I can talk to about it, and it's very isolating. And a lot of people just don't know, like, oh, one of our embryos was a 4AB. What does that mean? A lot of people just don't know. Whereas if you told me that, I'm like, oh, good job. That's great, So I think it's obviously by the person, but for me, I had to talk to people about it. And I think there's obviously a little trepidation before it happens, because you want to make sure that it's going to stick. But I also think you have to have those people in your life. I'll never forget, ironically, the girl that is going through this stuff, she saw me one day and she said, what's wrong? She could just see it on my face. And I just busted out crying in the middle of public, everything, and it was, I had gotten a negative pregnancy test. That was before we started everything with the fertility doctors. But it was just having that one person that could ask you those things, check in on you and make sure you're okay. I would say if you have someone in your life that is going through fertility struggles and you are newly pregnant, and let's say that they're part of your friend group and you're going to announce your pregnancy at Friendsgiving or, the next big friends dinner, whatever, call that person first. Better yet, send that person a text message and say, hey, I know that you've been struggling. I want you to know I'm thinking about you. We are pregnant. It's something that we're very excited about, but my heart hurts for you. Sending them a text message allows them to react any way that they want without having to be on the phone with you and sort of choke back the tears or give maybe I don't want to say a fake response, but maybe a fake response, right? It gives them the time to react, soak it in, and then they're not sort of blindsided at a big event in front of everybody else, because it is hard. And, when people kind of go on and on about how easy it was to get pregnant and this and that, it makes you think, well, what's wrong with me?
Right. So at the end of every podcast, I love for the guests to give one piece of advice for the people that are watching. And for you, I mean, that can be about an IVF journey. It can be just a personal reference. It can be anything. But if you could give one piece of advice to anybody that's watching, what would that be?
My advice would be to pray. If you're going through something in your life, pray and see where that takes you, because it'll take you big places. You'll be very surprised.
I agree. And I love watching your two little blessings grow, your beautiful little family. I love seeing them. My mom and I often talk about Sinclair and her little outfit, how precious she is. And I was like, I just knew she was going to dress her like so perfectly. And so it's so fun to be able to watch them. And I know that this is a huge blessing for you. Keep doing what you're doing. If people are reaching out to you and you can be a voice of hope, of reason, a shoulder to cry on, continue to do that, because praying is so miraculous, and it always leads us to a place of living a life of service. Mm-hmm. And, living that great life of service helps other people. Ashley, thank you so much for being on, for sharing your journey. I know it's a very difficult thing to talk about, even on the other side, because it can be triggering and thinking about things that have happened in the past. So I thank you for sharing your journey. And for anybody that is watching, please like the video. It lets us know that the content that we're putting out are things that you are interested in, and we can continue to do things like that. And subscribe to the channel. We have people from literally all over the country, and some coming up in the next couple months that'll be from all over the world. And you'll be able to know who's coming up on the next podcast if you subscribe. With all that being said, Ashley, thank you so much for spending your time with me and taking that time away from your family. And this has been Diary of a Queen.